Oh dear, still trying to write to Big Gamey. Let's get started. Hello, 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 and welcome to another One Lion of Code. I am One Lion. One Von says, I love Beat Saber. Oh dear. Okay, so DC Aggie is here. Hello, DC Aggie. How are you doing? Hope you're having a wonderful day so far. I am going to stop interacting with Bit Gaming now. I just started interacting with him like 10 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago or something because I was getting ready for the stream and we were in between things. So, yeah. I didn't want to get started on the next item that I was going to be working on, knowing that we're going to be coming into today, which is Community Day. Happy Friday to all of you. I hope you're having a fantastic Friday. Community Day is what today is. And what that means is that I will be opening up the stream to the community so that we can discuss topics that you're interested in talking about. And we have one known code review that was requested, and one that someone came in on yesterday. Was it yesterday? It was yesterday. And asked if we would do a code review on their code base. However, they never gave me a link. So, or maybe they did give a link during the stream, but I don't remember seeing it. I scrolled up through chat to try to find it. Yeah, I have no idea how to do code reviews, so I'm winging it. But if any of you know a good approach for it, then that would be cool. So what I have done so far, though, is I've cloned it. Give me a second and I'll show the screen. I have cloned it here. Use AI to explain the code. And that's, I mean, I don't mind doing that if they didn't expressly ask individuals to do the code review. They could have the AI do the code review for them if that's what they were looking for, but I'm not going to do that when someone is asking me to do a code review on their thing. But I have no problem doing that myself. I'm not saying that doing that's a terrible idea or anything. Okay, do I have everything ready though? I don't. I don't have everything ready. Hold on. Screen will be up shortly. But TBD is here. Okay, so good. TBD has some things to look for. Shout out to TBD Gamer who streamed this morning. Had a great time on his stream. He was working on developers.stream, which is an application where we can discover each other. Developers who stream and the people that want to watch developers who stream are able to have a place where they can use. Okay, so moving down here. TBD though, if you do have anything further to say before any of your meetings, I would welcome that first, because I know you typically have meetings that take you out of the stream. If there is anything on your mind, I did have some follow-up questions, but it would be unfair of me to just like start quick firing them at you in chat, especially if you are currently busy with other things as well. I don't want to pull you away from that. Where did I put those notes though? Okay. But I want to invite you, if you have anything that you want to talk about regarding what we were already discussing this morning on your stream. And again, there's absolutely no pressure to do so. And yeah, just inviting. That's all. Okay, I think my screens are ready. What is this? An error. Okay. We'll get back to that in a second. What is this? What is this? We can move you off screen. Actually, we can just close you for now. I don't need to save all those, but I will tell you about the effort of fixing the database. That's browser window so that we have access to a browser in case we need it. Okay, to the desktop. Okay, cool. So the invitation will be a standing invitation then, TBD. As it is for everyone, it's just that I would like to try doing this code review first all at once, but I just know circumstances, and I had already started responding to TBD on his stream, and then I got super busy, and then it's just anyway. You know the thing. Okay, so Juan Van is saying, "What is this MetaQuest game?" Looks down on your people. Oh, this looks fun. Was it the ad that you were looking at? There was some Beat Saber game or something. DC Aggie says the quest is getting dusty. VR chat has kind of died out. Oh, that's sad. I love Beat Saber. Hello, TBD Gamer. I bought it. Well, I'm going to put the word "it" there. Hoping it would work as a head-mounted display for monitors. It very much does not. So the thing that works better as an overpriced multi-virtual display HMD is the HoloLens 2. It is fantastic. There is no support for it anymore. I don't even know if they're still selling it. But the only thing that I ever ended up using it for, like I was trying to learn to do augmented reality development using that as the device that I was targeting. But yeah, I didn't get very much into it. So the only thing I was really using it for was an app called Mirage Desktop, which pretty much let you mirror your physical displays and add virtual displays, which was amazing. And it worked really, really well for my use case. This room is typically medium dark is what I'll call it for the lighting. So I didn't have to worry about the holograms. And the holograms are vibrant to begin with. Even if it was a bright room, I wouldn't be concerned with it. But yeah, the holograms were really good and the screens were displayed well. Since I have Visual Studio in dark mode, it was a little bit difficult because it reads black as transparent. So anyway, some pitfalls. Yeah, code review, says Juan Van. I always have code to review and figuring out this AI Copilot thing. Yeah, I was working with it a little bit as well on the past few streams, just because I'm not used to Copilot in Visual Studio Code, especially in agent mode. I'm still trying to work on my skills towards that, which is one of the things that came up in conversation. Not necessarily me specifically working on my skills in utilizing Copilot, but just using AI as a tool in my toolbox, and some opinions regarding the use of AI in software development and where it seems to be going. Okay, there's already good conversation going on too. I will certainly jump in if I have the chance, keeping an eye on some work conversations, says TBD Gamer. Oh, and then I wanted to actually read this, which is why I skipped over it, because I want to read it more close to when I'm going to start doing the code review, so I'm skipping that for now. DC Aggie says, how big is the code database? Is it small enough we could review like live like a PR, or will it take time to read through, comprehend, and possibly test? I don't know. I just cloned it at about 40 minutes ago. Because I have a lot of stuff that I need to do at the moment, and they started to become, the users on site decided that this was the week they wanted to actively try using the lab data upload tool and get the records into the database and have the record check process work. So I've been doing that a lot. I finished the database work early this morning. So all of the databases have the primary keys, foreign keys, indexes, etc., and retained all of the data that was already in them. So that was successful. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So still catching up on chat though. Would be nice if they did. As far as the HoloLens 2, would be nice if they still supported it. If it got bigger, it would be nice, in my opinion, if augmented reality devices the technology surrounding that got better. Because right now I really don't like bulky headsets. That's just my main back draw. The thing that I like the least, the next step down are glasses that'll just weigh down on your nose because they have projector screens up here. Or not even projector screens. They might have just a reflective surface that reflects the 2 micro OLED screens. Yeah, like those, for example. And it's like we can do better still. I know we can. And Juan Bon is saying Sid Meier's Civilization 7. That one. Oh, okay. So you saw Civilization 7, which has a VR version, I guess. I'm not really into those types of games, but I know the appeal, and I know that they are fun to the people that are into those games. Like, they're a blast. DC Aggie says, how big is the code base? I already read that. It'd be nice if they did. TBD Gamer says, I got a Quest 3 this week for my birthday. I have several VR headsets, including PSVR 2. I can sit playing racing games for hours in VR, but the Quest 3 gives me a headache after about 30 minutes. No! Do you need to fix the IPD? Do you need to fix the distance from your eyes? I don't know. That's weird. Juan Bon says, sure, you could do it with a Meta 2. Just need to turn HDR off. Secret Agent Coder. Says Juan Bon. TBD said, I wanted the Quest for Civ 7, but the reviews have been generally poor, and I'm not paying $60 for a game like that. Yeah, that's sad. Snubble is here. Snubble says, we should now switch to VS Code as it has support for agent mode. So I was just talking about that earlier. Thank you for expressing your opinion on that. And Juan Bon said, yeah, have to get used to it. Also, hi, says Snubble. DC Aggie says, even with prescription inserts, the Quest 3 is very, very blurry, especially anything not directly in the center of my vision. Is that what threes means? I'm not sure I know what the threes means. Oh, no. So are you saying that it's in your company? Because like the way it sounded was you were telling us all that we need to do that, or we should do that. And then DC Aggie says, but I've got pretty bad visions. Like multiple visions. If you have 3 of the same one in a row, that's called a weird. You should probably pay attention to them. I'll stop being mean. One Von said, oh, did it have bad reviews? Bad. And then I'll keep reading DC Aggie's message, which was, so might be wetware defect more than a software one. And then Snubble said, we're having a vibe coding training session in 2 weeks. Will be interesting to see how it tackles our massive amount of generated code. Yeah, that'll be interesting. And Marcus is here. Marcus says, needs to be way cheaper and not just a Windows 10. Sid Meier's is only on Windows 10? I mean, Civilization? Frozen is here. Hello, Frozen. Happy Friday from AZ. He said, they said, Meta glasses? Question man? Oh, yeah. Okay, you're right. Yes, agreed. But I don't think they're doing development on it anymore. It was dropped like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years now. DC Aggie says, I have a meeting starting at the top of the hour and lasting up to an hour, but would happily participate in community day or code review once the meeting is done. Cool. Sounds good. And then Snobble said, it's not my opinion. It's the request from management. DC Aggie said, if I'm going to spend time learning a new IDE, yes, I know VS Code isn't technically an IDE, then I'd probably pick Writer. True. Yeah, same. I'm going to agree with you. If I were to go to a new IDE, if you said, not you, I guess, if the world said Visual Studio is no longer allowed to be used for software development. If you are a professional software developer, then I would choose Writer over VS Code still. And TBD is just like, Writer's just the best. Just use it. I don't know why VS Code isn't an IDE. By itself, with no extensions, it's just a code editor. With the additional extensions, it can be IDE-like. So IDE being integrated development environment, including the build pipelines, the additional tools needed in order to compile, in order to do all of that, but you have to add extensions in order for that to happen. It doesn't just come built in to the application. That's my opinion on it. And then DC Aggie says, actually moving to Writer is probably a good idea. I'd love to have native Mac support. There you go. And then TBD said, may or may not be a bit of a JetBrains shill? Shill? I don't think I know that word. DC Aggie said, I like Visual Studio a lot, actually. It's Windows I'm wanting to avoid. Yeah, and I don't mind Windows. I don't mind Visual Studio proper either. And Marcus says, roll. That depends. Well, that depends on what you're building. If you're building old Windows framework applications, then you need Visual Studio Code. Oh, Visual Studio proper. DC Aggie then said, just paid my annual fee for .NET Ultimate. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen to my partner program subscription. Like, I got a message telling me that it's going to renew soon, or it needs to be renewed soon, but I have it on an automatic payment plan, but I don't see anywhere where it says that it's going to automatically renew. So I'm kind of concerned about that. And then TBD said to DC Aggie, ouch. And then Snubble said to TBD Gamer, I'm an anti-JetBrains shill, so we cancel out. Okay. So, yeah. Everyone has their preferences, and you are allowed to have your preferences. TBD Gamer said to Snubble, nobody's perfect. It's okay. Wink. All right. So I'm going to go back up and read TBD's. Just quick, thrown together. Here are some things to consider when doing a code review. Review of concepts, layout, relatively simple, digging into the details of the code, much more difficult. Okay. So if we're thinking of looking at the concepts and the layout, that would probably involve taking a look at the solution structure to see if it follows any recognizable patterns, which, you know me, I have no idea what patterns actually exist anywhere. Oh, geez. Oh, dear. Jukabot? No. Copy. I need to get back down in chat so that I can see the new stuff. Is that over here? That's over here. Let's go ahead and erase that. Hello, Harish. How are you doing? Tea? Pasta? Okay, so as far as reviewing, I'm putting it in the browser so that you can see better. It's easier to zoom in the browser than it is to zoom in Visual Studio. Actually, it's really easy to zoom in Visual Studio. I could just do that. I don't know. I like how the glyphs don't actually update or don't increase. Okay, DC Aggie, we'll see you when you get back. But yeah, I think it might be easier to review this way. How do I get to the file view directly? I don't know how to do that. The only way that I know how to do it is by clicking on a folder. Like, is there a way to go directly to files? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so number one, the first thing that I notice in the oh, what time is it? I mean, how far into the video are we? How many mics? Just under 30 minutes. Okay. So I will tell Saito in the Discord chat, what are these called? Thread, that will be at around 26:55 when we're starting. I am writing that down. Thank you so much. TBD. 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 Okay, so one thing that I'm noticing is that there is only one project, and in that project are folders that look like what I would turn into separate projects. That's a me thing. What do you guys think about putting the domain entities in the same project as the core infrastructure? Would you have two separate projects? Would you, yeah, and then an application folder. And I don't know if this was just done like my understanding of this is that Saito was wanting to, one, learn better techniques for doing auth, and two, improve on his software development workflow. DC Aggie is still contributing. Okay, so DC Aggie says, I always keep separate projects for domain, application, front ends, repo implementations. I do too. That's my preference. So pay attention to the Critical Friday meeting. So yeah, that's where I do want a whole bunch of other opinions or workflows or things that aren't opinions from you. Marcus said, I'm always accidentally doing it, but I don't know what causes it. So there must be a shortcut key to go into Visual Studio Code on the web. Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure there is. Like if you're in, or you said Visual Studio Code? There, I know that there is a, if you're in the Git Changes window, I don't know if there's a shortcut key to it though, but open in browser. Yeah, open in browser. Apparently it's just dot? Nuh-uh, that'd be weird. Oh, TBD Gamer is in a voice channel. Okay, so I'm pulling you into the stream room in 5, 14, 16, 1 minute, 59 seconds, 2 hours and 33 seconds, 15 minutes, 4, 0. You're in.
There you go. Hello.
Welcome.
Oh, this is me now. Don't install VR software.
Are you mumbling to yourself or are you trying to actually talk to us? TBD. TBD. I can confirm it is just dot. I just tried it. That's crazy. What's going on, TBD?
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing? I installed the Quest software on the PC yesterday and it messed with all my audio.
Oh, right.
including Discord.
Okay, I'm going to normalize volume, so I need to turn myself down. I have you up at 152% in Discord, but it should be relatively normalized now. We should be about the same level on stream.
Cool.
And by that I mean you're going to be extremely quiet when I try to test the volume.
Sorry, I'm thinking about what I'm just going to write. I've been able to weasel out of a meeting, so
Oh, awesome!
give me time to
Congratulations.
sit and talk a bit more. It is Friday, so canceling that meeting. So I've got until 2.
Yay!
Oh.
That's a whole 2 hours. What are you going to do with 2 hours with no meetings?
It's been a week. I've been productive with Liquid Sky and even developers that stream today, and then my work week has been the complete opposite. But needed to have those reversed potentially.
Yeah, mine.
But
I'm sure you know my work week has been involved.
Yeah, my problem is I'm not developing. I'm not doing any development for work. I'm just kind of being asked to figure out how to solve problems and tell other people how to do them without actually getting into the specifics. So I'm not doing any software development, and I'm not doing any actual productive work. So I'm bored but busy from the boredom as well. So.
Yeah. It's like you're busy doing work, but not the type of work you would prefer to be doing.
Yeah. So anyway,
it doesn't quite capture your interest.
No, is what it is right now.
Yep.
But yeah, I jumped in the voice because I saw you open this, and I was like, okay. This is something I've seen quite a bit of.
Okay. As far as the project structure, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so it's clean architecture, right? It's laid out like clean architecture. You've got your application, your infrastructure, your domain, etc. But putting it all in one project, and I've seen this recommended a few ways. And I think DCI kind of said it already. My concern is that it takes discipline, and this is where you get into architecture tests. It takes discipline to make sure you don't reference something from a thing that you shouldn't reference something. You have to keep. You always have to keep an eye on the flow of responsibilities. So breaking them into projects, that's harder to do because it smells quickly.
Right.
Like even with the tooling as it is to include, include reference to project, it's still much more difficult to do it that way than it is to do it accidentally through this.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Yeah, because like Rider, I think Resharper definitely within Visual Studio, and I think even Visual Studio these days, if you add a type and it's got access to the namespace, it will add the using at the top for you without actually questioning, which is a dangerous flow.
Yeah, so that makes perfect sense. So the recommendation here would be to split them up into the separate clean architecture approach pieces as separate projects. That way, the ones that cannot access some, let's say, a service on the client side that should only be running on the server.
Yeah, I mean that's the way I would personally do it. I've seen this style though. I've seen this kind of this modular monolith style where people will do it this way to kind of, it's still one application just broken down. But yeah, I think there's some. If it's just you working on it, and you, like I would say, right, if it's just you working on it and you're comfortable and you feel happy that you're changing things and you're confident with that, hey, I'm not going to reference the wrong thing from the wrong folder, then great. There's no major issue with doing it. It's just if you're working with others. I kind of went into this last night on a conversation. If you're working with others, code gets broken very fast, and you lose track of where it's broken quickly. Um, yeah.
Cool. So one thing that I'm also hearing is crossing streams. You really don't want to be
Yeah.
crossing streams.
Yeah. It's so easy to do as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, so if we consider this as Saito is just doing this by himself, but it also looks like he's structuring it in a way. I'm saying he, but I mean the gender neutral term.
yeah.
They're structuring it in a way that other people might be invited to use the application. It's just kind of what I'm seeing. Here is a library for doing .NET Auth that
Yes.
you, any random person, should be able to take as is, slap into your project, and now you have access to do auth using.
You've got a mini auth server, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
With that in mind, let's say that this is all expected to only be run on a server. Would you still say that this needs to be split up into different projects?
I mean, it still benefits from that separation of concerns, right? The isolation of the pieces, but I get the pragmatism in keeping it as one project, right? It's it's got a very specific use case. The code is relatively small, but yeah. Um, I kind of went into this yesterday, so I actually downloaded Milan Jovanovic, I would believe it would be pronounced. I don't think the J is a hard J. I reference him a lot because his content is very clear and generally very good. I like his. Here's the thing. You can use this thing. There you go. It's not
Yeah.
full of opinions. It's strongly opinionated enough to say, "Hey, here's the way I would do this." And he actually provides, if you sign up for his newsletter, he provides a clean architecture template, and it's structured as projects. But one of the things that it raised is like the email stuff. I would tend to break out communications components as a separate piece, because then my application core is not limited to email. It's just, hey, I want to communicate. Go off and communicate. Doesn't have. I don't want to concern, because the lines get blurred very quickly. Like you got mail traps, then grid. Oh well, we need another mail provider. We got to add it into
Right,
here.
exactly.
Our main code has a reason to change now, and I find that the larger an application gets, you want to be changing the core of it less.
Right.
And
Right.
so, like, to
Yep.
me, putting email servicing stuff outside of the actual core would be
Yep.
the most useful thing than having just the
Agreed.
interfaces set up.
Okay, so to turn this into a suggestion again, so that's kind of where I'm going with this. I don't know why. It's just kind of what I feel like would be most beneficial. This looks to be, like you said, one clean architecture, but also semi-domain driven, would you say? Where we have everything that is responsible for doing emails in this services emails folder. And the interface is there with that domain, as well as the service implementations for that interface. This is where you're talking there should be something more like a core project that has all of the interfaces and shared objects. Is that how you would structure that? Or
you could have a shared kernel. Yeah, you could have a shared kernel. Once you start breaking pieces out, you've got to figure out what communication looks like, whether you're pulling in. So if you have infrastructure, so the way I do this in developers.stream, right? If you look at the infrastructure is many projects. It's not just one.
okay, so it's more like a
there's-
solution folder that has
Yeah.
multiple projects.
Yeah, because I don't consider it to be. It's not a one-to-one project to thing. I think it's just a separation. So with developers stream, we got like infrastructure, then infrastructure auth, infrastructure Twitch, infrastructure YouTube. So those pieces are added
Yeah,
in
so
there.
pretty much your domains that would all belong
Yeah,
in that one infrastructure
yeah, yeah.
project.
They belong as part of the overall infrastructure, but they're not. They're separated.
Yeah.
Is the right word logically? Yeah. That way. So then your email service in your core application is just configured. Now, one thing I did like about Milan's design is he actually introduced me to it. Opened my eyes to a different way of doing the like the DI stuff, where he basically said he basically has all the DI concerns for an individual component of the application configured within that library. So the infrastructure might have its own DI thing, and then the main application just says add infrastructure, and the infrastructure thing knows how to set itself up. So you don't have all the concerns dragged through. So email service
Right.
wouldn't necessarily be included in the main application. It would just be available to you because you've added
did add
infrastructure, and now that interface is there. So you don't actually have to explicitly set up the DI for email service in there, and you can handle that. So if you deploy the new version of the library, your main application doesn't need to change. You just deploy
Right.
the latest version of your infrastructure DLL, and now your application doesn't need to even change. You can just, when it starts up, it'll go, oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah, so this is the approach that you're talking about, really, except that he only has it for databases, where in your library you have a whole bunch of service helpers and you have one overarching one specifically for the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
has
So
all of your service injections.
yeah. Yep. So what I've done in Liquid Sky is I've kind of put those as extension methods, extension types in, well, no, extension methods is the correct thing, in the application core itself, and configure those things where now I think I will mimic Milan's way of doing that and put those concerns in their relative libraries, and then just include them in the main application by add infrastructure, add domain, add application, etc.
All right. So grouping together essentially the related dependency injections by I don't even know what to call these things, but like infrastructure, domain, all the things that you just said. Yeah. Grouping together dependencies for each of them.
You look at a nice clean architecture circle, or the nice clean architecture.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to recognize it if I saw it. Just saying.
Yeah. Basically, the domain is at the center of everything and shouldn't reference anything on the outside. The application can reference the main. Those sorts of rules. And infrastructure and presentation sit on the outside. So that's why I break out everything as the way I do is infrastructure.twitch infrastructure, because they're all sitting on the outside. They're all things that I interact with the outside world with.
I'm just taking notes so that I can write something meaningful back to them.
Yeah. But in terms of layout, it's a very clean layout. It's obvious what
I already
doing.
saw something that I assumed you would comment on early on, but you didn't.
Documentation?
No. Wait, I'm not actually seeing it though. Unless it is specifically because of this. Yeah, these are from an external library, it kind of looks like. But the thing that I was talking about was in the documentation, it says that it's using minimal APIs.
Right, yeah.
But I didn't really see any minimal APIs other than unless it is this add open API and
no, it's not. If you scroll down, it'll be map auth endpoints at the bottom. That's an extension method that will. So this is one of my big problems with this is one of my big problems with minimal API. It's a great concept, but then people started, see, there you go, there's all your routes being added, those are the individual pieces. These are, extra extensions. So the problem is that when minimal API came around, we had to do, the beauty of it was it looked like Express, it was nice and clean, and you could do that. But then when you get beyond a minimal application, you ended up with all these endpoints in your program.cs, and they didn't really give any guidance or structuring for that. So now people reinvent all the things
Yeah.
that come with like that.
Controllers,
And
essentially.
yeah, and there you go. Map login endpoint. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. Okay.
And is this actually using? No, it's not.
Ooh,
This kind
that's
of
blurry.
almost looked like it was using what's your library? Fast endpoints.
Fast endpoints. Yeah. Well, that's the design,
But it's
right?
not.
So
This is just using.
fast endpoints sits on top of minimal API. Fast
Right.
endpoints does all this for you. It's the same thing. You just deferring all that to a separate library.
Yeah, in which case
The
I
one
would
thing
continue using regular controllers just because I'm comfortable with them. Regular API
yeah,
controllers.
yeah. But don't forget the minimal API is a complete restart of that stack. Old controller styles is minimal API replaces all the old style API controllers, etc.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on top of it. It's a replacement for.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. They are use this or this, not mix them in some. Well, I mean, you can mix them still, but most of the time you're going to be using one or the other. And just because of the way that you configure the endpoints and stuff, like even in fast endpoints where it's not this, you do get attributes and you get the inherits endpoint of this is the in type, this is the out type kind of thing.
Yeah.
It felt like a lot of additional files and code as opposed to, from my perspective, because of what I'm used to, and I'm sure if I practice more, fast endpoints would be more appropriate for me. But in a controller that you give a top level route to, and then your individual actions inside of it, and as long as you have the discipline to keep it organized, then you won't run into an issue where you have a class that has 6,000 endpoints in it.
Well, yeah, that's since I saw controllers for the first time, that was my immediate concern, and it was justified over the years of seeing
Oh yeah.
what happens when people dump too much stuff in control. I don't know if you heard me say this today. I have a couple of services inside of developers.stream, and I started to say, I don't like this anymore. I don't like this layout. It's just doing too much. There's too much mess. But I don't want to abstract that with yet more eventing or more messaging because it just makes it even, more disconnected. So I've got to refigure out or rethink that when I come to it. But
Okay.
the other thing I would say here is there's a concern in that this is in application, and this is a presentation layer component. The endpoint is technically the presentation layer, not the application
I
layer.
agree.
But the concerns are merged here now because this is actually the problem that like DCAG mentioned, right? The lines are already blurred because this is not that
I
thing that
mean,
it's
this is the
sending, that
application
mediator.send.
here.
Yeah, that mediator.send is the application layer. The command handler for that logging command is the application layer, but this is the presentation layer, and these are both under the application folder.
That makes perfect sense. I hope I can summarize that because that's a great response.
Well, this is the sort of stuff that I would love to have this discussion, like, because I don't see logically any problem with this. It kind of makes sense. It's kind of a slice, right? This is all one slice of the application. So why not have them all in the same folder? But then if we go by someone else's definition of what good clean architecture is, it doesn't quite fit with that pattern. So these are the sorts of conversations that are useful.
I'm going to read off Marcus's comment real quick. Other than when I first started out with Microsoft Access, 2002, I loved Access. The number of users I've had for any one system I've written has never been over 20. Same. Actually, well, no, sorry. The Sogeti one was hundreds of thousands, if not millions, which was kind of fun. Anyway, and I've always written things on my own. So for me, a lot of this world would never apply to me. So outside of this world. Anyway, you know what I meant to read.
I think on the whole pragmatism thing, right? It's like write the code that makes sense to you, that you can maintain, that you can work with. Doesn't matter if it conforms to someone else's expectation at the end of the day of what good code is, because we all have varying definitions of what is good. So I think it's more, can you be productive? Can you fix problems quickly? Are you comfortable that you're not overworking yourself because you're trying to rush through to get something done? Like, do you feel like, okay, this is a good change?
You're speaking directly to my heart.
I'm not releasing 50 defects with every fix, right? Like, you know, the churn on the support is not terrible. Then does it really matter how you really lay out the code? That's why I said being pragmatic. This is a slice, right? It's from API endpoint right through to the application to do its thing. It's kind of a, depending on, yeah. So why not put it all together?
Right.
But in its organizational style, it's
yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It's easy to navigate. Aside from me not being able to read and see things like at the very bottom of program.cs is where the map endpoints essentially is.
That's just more familiarity with the
yeah, exactly. But I mean, when you start digging into it, you can navigate around pretty easily. You can understand what these things are supposed to be doing based off of the naming of them. So I do like that. But to riff off of your statement about pragmatism, part of that is also being pragmatic about working with teammates who might need to support your code as well, or make extensions off of it, or their code depends on yours depends on theirs, kind of situation.
And that's, again, I'm kind of the opinion that while a code base is mine, I'm good. If I can work in it, it's fine. But if someone else comes into that code base to work on it, they also have a say in how it's written and how it's structured. And if they have problems, that's why I say, like, that's when you start worrying about development documentation. That's
the documentation conversation.
But before we even go into that realm, can I just raise one other thing?
Of course, you absolutely can.
What is with the random spacing in this?
Yeah, I was staring at that just now.
I get the separation of Google SSO, but the usings don't really matter.
Yeah. Like the code cleanup will move them so that everything that's in the same assembly will get grouped together, and it'll put a space if you use that.
Yeah, that's
this thing just stands out on its own. That's all.
Yeah, and then there's an extra line after the last on the Google SSO one at the bottom. I'm like, clean it up. It's fine. Like,
but it's okay.
I add.
We're not triggered.
Deliberate space. I do add deliberate space. I don't have like the maps there. I get why there's a space between the map of the endpoints and then the SSO, the Google SSO one, right? Because it's technically a third party integration. I get why the separation there. Mentally, that makes sense to me. But yeah, extra space all over the place is just
odd. It's very odd.
Yeah, like line 27 should be there. Line 29 should not be there.
That can go away. And I'm not saying should, I'm saying can. I'll let you use your proper language.
No, I'm being absolute.
It must.
Yeah. You shall not extra space, no. Yeah. Well,
I love it though.
Yeah, I mean, but it's amazing how a little bit of space can aid in your understanding of code as well.
Your cognitive load
actually change how you read the code, and having clumped up, you might miss things where if it's spaced out, you may not. You catch something, something will stand out. It's very subtle sometimes, but it can make the difference between readable and unreadable code. Like if you have a block of like variable assignments and method calls, and like say 5 or 10 lines of that where they're all bunched together, you've got to kind of scan through and understand the context. If you put like the variable assignments together, then the method calls, space them out, you'll read that's variable assignments, that's method calls, that's the assignment of that variable to that result of that method call, right? Those things will come quicker with just a little bit of spacing.
Yeah, and Marcus did bring up a good counter argument. I don't think it's really a counter argument. I still think it's in support of. But Marcus said that because of the state of my eyes, I have to have everything zoomed in, so I avoid having those
Yeah,
extra spaces.
that makes sense. I get that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's still
We had,
valid to.
we used to work with a guy that was an Oracle DBA, and he could only see if his face was an inch away from the screen.
Yeah. My cousin is like
That
that.
was an interesting way to work, where a guy has basically got his face right against the screen and has to zoom everything in, and you know,
And in fact, my uncle is like that. I have two
yeah,
family members that are like that.
like we can't appreciate as
As fully
fully able
sighted.
people to
Mhm.
be able to the difficulties and challenges involved. So, but in general, when you're working in a code base, you've got to adapt to the group that you're working with.
Right. Yep. I agree with that. There was, before we go into the document conversation, this features folder. What do
Yeah.
you think of it? So is this like, again, I wouldn't recognize solid, I wouldn't recognize clean architecture. Is this normal? Is this something
Yeah.
that you would recommend not doing?
I would say that I've yet to find a really good layout that works for me. Features make sense. You know, you're guided to, if you're reading like clean code and you're reading, Robert Martin's stuff, and others, not just Robert Martin,
Right.
but you're kind of guided to organize by what it's doing, not what it is. So you avoid the technical implementation and kind of help people understand what the code is doing by describing it. So features makes perfect sense. Like that's auth, that's health check, and then you've got the sub features. If you look at Liquid Sky, I've flip flopped a lot on things because in the application layer they are technically all features. So or
Yeah, and that's
the
why I was
aspects
wondering
of
about
that
that
feature
features
set.
term.
Yeah. So I kind of I'm this is one of those areas where I'm completely flexible because all it is organization, right? If it doesn't make sense, I'll
Yes.
change
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
I'll change it because I can't. If my normal measure is, do I understand where it is? Can I get to it very quickly? If I can, and it's not just familiarity with that piece. Especially with, if you look at the size of Liquid Sky, there's no way I'm familiar with every single piece, like because it's weeks between touching some of the code. But can I get to that? Do I know where to find that piece quickly? Does it make sense to me? And if it doesn't, I change it. Features
Yeah,
can spread across more than
like
one
for
place.
me, emailing would be a feature that the application can do. It can send auth emails and stuff.
Well, the feature
Maybe.
would be the kind of communication. The service, the email is an implementation, like backing that feature.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Again, you could argue it both ways.
No, no, no.
Right?
I mean, I need to
But
learn, or not need to. I am
to me,
interested in learning about this.
the feature is customer communication. The thing that I execute. That's why I said I would probably break. To me, I would break out email as a service as an external concern, so that it's abstracted from the main application. Because at the end of the day, how I email them or how I communicate with them isn't the concern of that particular piece of the application.
Right.
I do that in Liquid Sky with, and I feel very self-conscious saying that all the time because obviously it's of an application scale now that it's very
Yeah, I
relevant to
mean,
a lot
there's
of what
so
I'm talking
much
about.
in it.
But that's why I was doing it, right?
Yeah.
But
You're
I
definitely
have
not offending me, and I'm sure not anyone else
yeah.
on the stream.
Communications is a separate component. How you want to be communicated, and the long-term design for that is how you want to be communicated with is your customize. You customize how you want to be communicated with, not the service that's sending. You might say, hey, I want to be notified when something changes, right? How you want to be communicated, whether it be email, text message, carrier pigeon, etc., is not the application that needs to produce the notifications concern.
Right.
It's the application. It's the component of the application says, how do you want to be told about this thing? And
Right.
when do you want to be told about this thing? Do you want to be told about it hourly? Do you want to be told about it daily? Do you want a summary at the end of the month of all the stuff that's gone on? That's your thing. And then the method of communication is an extra piece there. So notifications and communications in general I externalize.
I like that. I like it a lot. So maybe the suggestion or the improvement, the room for improvement. Hi, Bikini. The room for improvement could be to do a little bit more in the abstraction, so that there isn't just one abstraction layer by itself and not everything all together.
It's a consideration I would give,
Yeah, a
but
consideration.
overall, this code is really clean. I could navigate it very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely
You
agree.
can get to everything without any trouble. Like from a like I said before, the concepts are sound, the organization and navigation of things, the spacing,
It is odd.
the
It is
spacing.
odd. I mean, it is a preference thing on our part,
Yeah,
and it really does. Like, if we were going to work in this code base, it would be something that would cause us to take a second look and be like, that needs to be fixed. And then we would start just having a negative experience working in the code base. So that's why it is important, is because if anyone else is to be working with you or even to be looking through the code, and you have things that are not generally good practice, like having a lot of extra spacing, for example, then it'll throw some people, and then you'll open it up for some pretty negative responses.
it's go. It's why going into a new code base is difficult when you've not been responsible for it. If you
Oh,
go
did
into
we
a new
talk about this
organization, by the
before?
way,
I kind of feel like we talked about this before, but go ahead.
yeah, you go into a new code base, you've got to adjust to years worth of if you're in a good code base, you just have to adjust to how they standardize things, right? If you're in a um, less than optimal code base that has had no one has been held to any standards and is able to do whatever they want um, throughout the years, then you will struggle because there'll be no consistency. There'll be no wow.
Yeah, that's crazy that it's
Um,
just dot.
yeah,
That's
here's Visual Studio
insane.
Code. Yeah, in your browser. Yeah. So um, it's very difficult to go into someone else's code base and just familiarize yourself. But I I do believe that it's the development team's job to make sure that the standards and practices they're comfortable with are kind of enforced, and um, you know you don't just let things go because the PR's due, because you've left it to the last minute to get the work done. Um, it's that's often
I
more
don't mind it.
costly in the long term.
But I completely agree with that. So, do you think that there is anything more that we can cover to make this like worth their time to actually watch back? Because, like you said, there was the kind of like overarching overview, take a look at the structure, see if things are
Yeah.
where they should be, and then there's the go into the details of the actual implementations. And
One thing that I would consider is, and this is actually Milan did um, raise this, um, mediator with a capital R
yeah, yeah,
is going commercial. So if you're building a library of it that you feel that you want to share with other people, realize that library now comes with the potential of requiring someone to have a license. Potential. I think it's one of the things, again, with developers.stream. I consider, if I'm going to use a UI library, I do not want to get anything. I do not want to use anything in there that will require someone to go and sign up for anything. They should not have to do that to be able to check it out and play with the application. It should be just check it out and go. What about the need to be able to strip out the
Yeah.
database layer when you need a different
And I'm
provider?
kind of responding to that ish, but like they're using EF Core, which has pretty good provider support. I personally don't know how well the identity DB context works with other databases, but I'm assuming it works pretty well with any SQL database.
It will work well with SQLite. It will work well with SQL Server and Postgre. MongoDB. I even have
Yeah.
MongoDB EF Core in Liquid Sky.
Mm-hmm.
So the code is consistent. That is one of the niceties. I'm able to use that layer.
Yeah.
I'm of the camp. I've seen enough. I've only ever seen one company really commit to ripping out the database layer. And it cost them big time.
I assume.
The company I was working for had to buy them because they were out of money by the
Oh
time they
wow.
actually uh,
Jeez.
changed from SQL Server to Oracle.
Oh, what? Wait, why?
Because they felt that Oracle was more enterprisey and would scale better.
I mean, it is more enterprisey. Yes, it costs a lot more too.
But it cost them a lot of time. I mean, this is long before EF Core, but you know,
Yeah.
it happened.
They obviously
Yeah,
had just too much money.
set it on fire.
I
Set it all
never
on
know.
fire. It's fine. um, in, with Liquid Sky, I had Couchbase in one component, and I ripped that out and replaced it in an afternoon. So I think it's more the code around this will deal pretty well with switching that out. But
It was the it was in one of the actual endpoints, wasn't it?
it's
So
fine.
you did actually see that they were using mediator, right?
Yes.
Not mediator.
Yeah, the inject mediator.
Yeah, I saw it. Okay.
Well, they do create an email provider interface, right? But that's what I'm saying. I would probably end up creating those providers as an external thing, and then be able to configure
Yeah, I
that
mean
at the application level.
that's kind of what I did as well. So now I get to talk about mine. What I did with the RMA apps was I have an actual library for email services, and I think if I did this the way I normally would, it would be in two projects. It's in one project, mother. One project that just has the interfaces, and then one that has standard implementations of like the SendGrid email sender or SMTP email sender, or what's the other one? Exchange email sender.
Emails. Every single email library, every single kind of code sample I look at for doing email looks almost identical. It just never seems to be.
Yeah, and I mean it kind of makes sense. So one of the things that I found was like big companies, like let's say Amazon, because this was my most recent experience, they have a library for interacting with their S3 buckets, and it's really easy to use. You just need to do some configurations. But what we tend to do as developers is put a wrapper on top of that third party library to make it easier for us to use in our application so that we don't have to keep rewriting the same configurations and stuff. So yeah. I think that's where a lot of our work is like, do we really need another library to be on top of something that already exists as a library?
Well, the thing I found is the email, the general concepts, if you're dealing with SMTP, right? The core of the email part is the same, but then there's subtle differences in how each one auths or how each one is configured. So you end up with rewriting the same code 3 or 4 times, or you end up with trying to like stretch it out a little bit too thin.
Right.
So it's easier to just kind of dump it all into separate classes and yeah.
Yeah, like the whole point is that the base email sender or whatever you want to call it which this is terrible architecture because this is from like 1812. Um, that base implementation just has those core things that you want to be able to do. Send email using a single email address, using a list of email addresses with or without CCs, BCCs, what is the subject, what's the message, and I don't know what this other thing is.
But
Send,
that is all wrapped up in mail message these days, right?
I guess.
Yeah.
I'll say yes. Like I said, this
Yeah.
one is from 1864. Why does this say I last updated it in 2024? That's a lie. Oh, because I just upgraded to .NET 8, that's all.
Yeah.
I didn't actually rewrite the code. And the first history starts in 2024, which probably means this was in my TFS version. There we go. 2020 is when I heard this.
Do you know my pin?
Oops. Sorry about that, Marcus.
But
So yeah.
Coming back around on the whole documentation thing, I know
Yes.
we briefly hit on it. So earlier on, I said that I don't do much documentation when I'm working on internal pieces until a second person comes along, and then we find out where we don't understand things and where documentation is needed. It's kind of my litmus test for that. And again, like I said earlier on, if something doesn't make sense when I come back around on it, I reevaluate. I'm happy to change it, and yeah, I'm not saying I will never document something. There are pieces documented in Liquid Sky. There's pieces documented in developers.stream already. But you only really know the best time to document is when you've got two perspectives, so that you can make sure you're answering more than just your own questions. Because what you're thinking about as you're developing is not the same thing that other person's thinking about as they're coming back to that code. So I think that's the better way. However, if I'm doing something for public consumption, it is my responsibility, especially for an API, to make sure that API is as well documented as I can, that the expected use cases are there, that I can answer things like what happens when you try and provide no name and it throws an error. Here's why it threw an error. What happens when you try and request it too many times? There's all sorts of things you have to handle, and especially when you open something up to public consumption, because people are people. So that's kind of why I don't document extensively, because I'm just writing words for the sake of writing words. And
yeah, there are like, man, there's so many things that come up all the time. Like 3 things from that. Let's see if I can keep track of all of them. I'm not as good as AI and be able to keep context. Oh wait, I forgot what we were talking about. Kidding. So the first one is just a response to something that you did say on your stream. And by the way, so I think TBD did a good job of kind of catching everyone up to what the conversation was. And it just has to do with when do you document, when do you do documentation. But you made a statement about how you don't work with that many complex situations. You break things down into small enough pieces. Is that accurate, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So then, what do you think of the concept of relativism, where one thing that might seem simple to you might not actually be simple to anyone else? And how that applies to your statement, I guess.
Well, that's when I'm doing that sort of stuff. That's exactly why I wait until someone else comes along. And if I can't explain it, or it's a bit more complicated, we document it together so that we understand, that we have a shared understanding of how that's working. So what I tend to do is I break up code. I try to cut down on the size of most code. I'm not in the whole 10 lines of code, it's a new function sort of camp. I am in the as little lines of code as possible to do the thing that you're doing and don't do too much.
Yeah, it's still the unit of work that you're considering.
Camp. So I'm all for clean code, not the practices, not all the practices prescribed by the book. I don't know if you saw a conversation I had in Discord the other week. It was a lengthy one.
Probably not. I don't read very much.
It was a lengthy one about clean code and opinions on certain developers, but basically, if I call a method and the method is really obscure and I can't understand it next time I come to it, I rename the method. I try and break down things into very clear steps, and they make sense to me, and I can navigate the code. Great. When a second person comes along, if we have a disagreement as to why something's working or how something's working, etc., we either change the code or we document the outcome, and we document the standard, and we change the standard accordingly to make sure that both of us can now work in that code base. If a third person comes along and reads the documentation and can't follow it, we work through it and reflect the documentation changes that we all agree upon, so that the documentation is considered organic and flexible enough, like the code, right? Because that's the biggest problem I have with documentation, is I've seen enough of it that's stale and ignored.
Oh yeah, it never gets updated.
And I've been referred to it, and I'm like, this doesn't even tell the truth. I got referred to some documentation. I was asking about using Redis for development testing, because I learned that our application performed differently based upon whether Redis was enabled or not. But in dev, by default, we don't have Redis enabled because it's costly. Okay, so I turned on Redis and it broke because I was following the directions that people gave me, and I'm like, it's not even correct because it's just been ignored, because developer A has done it. Now developer B comes along and says, hey, how do I do this? And they say, oh, I'll paste it to you, and they send them the actual documentation. They don't go back and change the documentation. So there's just
So man, you're coming up with so many good things. I'm going to talk about all of them now. Copy paste documentation. All right. Just to cut in, because there are a lot of things that you touched on that are just like, you know me, I follow keywords. You said extensively. What would you define as typical documentation versus extensive documentation?
Well, let's start with the simplest form of documentation, which is comments.
Yes.
Right. I don't believe in commenting what code is doing, so that goes away. Right. That's the first step of documentation.
Right. So self-documenting code is what you prefer.
Yeah. I don't want to see a bunch of comments. Does thing, does next thing, does this. But if you wrote the code a little clearer, I'd understand it. And Uncle Bob does make a point on that. He's like, a lot of that comes from a time when you had to be careful about how big your variable names were, because they took up valuable space that you didn't have available to you. But you had to explain a concept, so you had a comment to kind of save some energy, explaining what you needed to explain.
Like the 2 and 3 letter table names.
Yeah, we don't have that limitation anymore. We can write things, because at the end of the day, the compilers will compress those variables down anyway for themselves.
Right.
Especially with .NET, where it's jittered, right?
And where you're using .fuscator. Yeah. And it just turns them into variables.
If you're squeezing it down and hoping that no one can reverse engineer it, yeah. Yes, this is TBD. I think that extensive code documentation, like lots of comments in your code, I don't say that there should never be a comment in code, but again, I wait for that second person to come along, right? Or I'll comment something if I can't even get my head around that concept enough to describe it. And if I ever come up against that code and I can describe it better, or it's because there's a smell there because the code was overly complicated, then I'll rewrite the code. So at that level, comments en masse, no. Documentation should be purposeful. It should be explaining what needs to be explained. Like, how do you check out Liquid Sky and build it and get off the ground running it? That is a piece of documentation that is useful, because there's a lot of moving parts. What prereqs do you have? what do you need to run first? How do you need to run things? How do you need to configure
So
things?
getting started.
Those are things that you need to do. But again, you should go through with someone else who is not the person who set it up to validate that documentation is accurate. And if it's not, you change the documentation. So I think you're aware, Rambling Geek and Mojo both have kind of worked in Liquid Sky a little bit. They're like they're tinkering, they're learning. That's the opportunity there for them. But Mojo works on a Mac primarily with remote development. He actually does it. He checks out the code on on a Linux distro, and he SSHs into the code into it to communicate to work with it. So his setup is different
because it's fun. I don't need no stinking IDEs.
Rambling Geek has a more typical layout that I do. Recently, Rambling Geek upgraded his processor, and it broke his WSL, which put his Docker on its bum.
Oh no!
And he couldn't run the VM. He couldn't run the containers for Liquid Sky. So we had to figure out all these things like, is it permissions? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? So we ended up trying to go through those steps. But those sorts of things are experiences that you have to validate. Is this a documentation thing? Is this a thing? So not documenting lies the same way as you don't. I believe in writing clear code and deleting things that are redundant or you shouldn't leave, especially with Git. You shouldn't leave a bunch of code commented out because you're scared you might need it later. Just delete it. If it's not necessary, delete it.
Which is an opinion, of course. I have heard strong opinions for it's all right if you leave commented code in your code base.
Yeah, no, it is his opinion, and it's funny because I'm saying this as a summary of the conversation I had on basically clean code.
That's fine. I'm good.
Whatnot,
glad to hear it.
Was basically I was like, I don't like that it's so opinionated and authoritative, and that's the problem when people have some experience. Their comments can be taken as do this, not this. And
what do you mean by that, Marcus? Marcus was saying, I wish somebody would tell Copilot agent mode that whack whack comments here. And then it cuts off. So like, I know that one thing that people have been using comments for increasingly lately is to have Copilot script out whatever it is that they're trying to do. So they describe it in step 1, step 2, and then they go back and have Copilot fill in step 1, fill in step 2, that kind of thing. But then they don't delete their comments.
Did you see what the JetBrains AI did to my code today? Did you see
No,
that?
I wasn't actually watching. I just heard you talking about it. You're like, I need to turn that off.
It got uninstalled quick.
Oh gosh, so not even just turned off.
JetBrains emailed me the other day and said, because I've paid for the full license for JetBrains, right? Now you have access to AI Pro. Okay, so I thought I'll turn it back on again. So I turned it on. And today I did that. I commented, I was describing what I was going to do for registering the API key in developers.stream. And I commented, okay, we're going to go and get the user, get the API key for the existing user. We're going to do this. And if it doesn't exist, we're going to create a new one. And then my IDE locked up mid me typing and just replaced all my code and dumped in the code as per my comments. And I'm like, what? Why? I didn't remove the comments, but I'm like, no, you don't just go, no. So I just removed the AI tool. I'm like, now I know it was a completion mode. I know that I probably turned it on to be aggressive. But if that's what completion is, where it just ignores what you're doing and just says, nope, this is the code you want.
Overwritten.
That's gone.
Yeah.
That is gone. Considering this week's conversations around AI, that was like, okay, no. Yeah. Like, I want to ask you, and you give me some suggestions. I do not, or prompt me, show me the code you think. Yeah, it's a tool, but you need to know how to use it.
Get good.
Exactly. Yeah, I get it. No, it got gone.
That's what I heard. Um, okay,
If
so just
if
to
I'm inferior because I choose not to use that, I'm
oh no,
inferior.
no, 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 definitely not. No, it is a
Yep.
preference. It's just like when at some point again, because I like this conversation about documentation, and I'm trying to keep,
Yep.
you know, from going too far. But when we do talk about it again, there is acceptance of course, people that have opinions on their personal use of AI, but then saying that broadening that term to say that it should be thrown out, essentially,
Mhm.
is where it's like, we should have a discussion about that. So, but to
Yes.
keep going with documentation, um,
Hmm.
I'm trying to write notes as you go. You're coming up with so many good points that I want to talk about that it's hard to choose from these. But you did also mention something that I do love in an approach for how to do documentation. So I'm going to turn your words into that specific thing. Let's say you're new to a code base and there is no documentation and you need to figure out how to get it set up. Or maybe you run into some pitfalls during setup through someone else's documentation of it, instead of the person that's just copying and pasting and sending you, here's how to do it. You are going through the documentation, finding out where the issues are, and updating the documentation as you go. So I'm just trying to, I guess, reiterate something that you touched on without actually
Yeah.
saying this is a good process or not a good process. So what do you think about it?
Yeah. I think using onboarding someone is obviously the best test of documentation, especially for that level of stuff, right? Like onboarding someone. Here's the documentation we have. Don't just follow it blindly. If you have any questions, let's have a conversation. Let's go through it. Let's review it. If you find there's differences because an API has changed or a library's changed or something else has changed, let's talk about how we document it again.
Yeah.
Um, those cannot be lost, right? Sometimes that documentation sits there stale because 6 months later another person comes on board and it's like, oh yeah, when I did that, it broke for me too.
Huh?
Really? Why didn't you update the documentation?
Why didn't you?
Like,
Yeah.
I, yeah, I wish I could say it hadn't been there before.
Right.
So I
I've
think I,
definitely done it.
I think in general, I believe in efficiency. Don't use a lot of words when one will do. Don't use, like, it, I like talking. I clearly like talking. I stream
Yeah,
5
yeah, and
days
I
a
have
week.
that highlighted.
Um, I also don't like unnecessary meetings. I don't like meetings where people solve problems when problem solving isn't on the agenda. Why waste the energy? I actually got told off. I'm actually going to have a poor review at the end of this month because I just sit quietly in meetings. And my boss is like, I want you to engage more. I'm like, yeah, but people are making solutions in meetings that are about
That makes no
ideas.
sense.
Why are we solving these things? He wants me to engage more, so I'm going to have that come back up against me at the end of the month.
Yeah.
I don't feel we don't have to write everything down if we take a cleaner, more pragmatic approach to how we build the stuff in the first place. Not everything has to be written down and explained if the code does the thing that it has to do, and that you can glance at it and understand it and trust it as well. So, but when you need documentation, when something is less like if it's an algorithm, if it's something that's like calculating a route of a bus and it's trying to figure out the most efficient route for it, if there's complicated logic in there that isn't just as easy to read, because you do need to be more efficient with that code. You can't be like, oh well, look, I abstracted the abstraction around the abstraction through this abstraction, right? That's wasteful when you're doing something that needs to be high performance. Sure, document that, explain it, but explain it in the clearest possible terms. Document impact, document tests required, document, how it integrates with the system. But do it because you need it, not because you feel that you have to do it. And then people don't have to read through a whole lot of
Yeah,
fluff
yeah. Extra
to
stuff.
get to the actual necessary stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I strongly recommend using the wiki feature if you are going to be writing a lot. so that you have specific points that they can jump to and find that specific thing they're searching for.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
isn't a good example
And
of that, but
I get on the topic of, you know, me sounding very like you should do this, you should do this.
yeah.
I get
I'm
that we
trying to
all
get used to it.
we all do have differences in how we learn, how we understand, and I think that's why I'm a fan of doing it at a team level rather than an individual level. Because me
Mhm.
personally, I can get along well with my own code. I feel that I write clean enough code, and I'm pragmatic about it in general enough to understand that if I feel I need to change it, I will change it. However, if another person comes along, how do they learn? How do they grow? How do we make sure we're continuing to be productive and comfortable in that same code base? And I think that's the my general approach. Code
So
should ideally describe itself. Yeah.
I'm kind of asking Marcus directly that question, but I still want to make another observation slash comment for
Yep.
your response. And that is, I've noticed that you absolutely want to encourage as often as possible for team members to communicate with each other. So do you think, I should ask, your core reason for wanting to defer documentation mostly driven by I want to encourage other developers to come have a conversation with me about the code? Was that too leading? That might have been too leading.
I don't think it's a. I don't think it's. Yeah, I don't think it's a necessary a forced conversation reason. I think it is very much um, an efficiency thing. Developers should speak. Developers should plan. Um, Developers should ask questions. Those are shoulds. No, I refuse to bow on them. Right? We should plan. We should ask questions. Right? A lot of developers don't. A lot of developers will go off and just get the job done based upon requests, and I think that's oftentimes the cause of a lot of documentation requirements, is because we've gone off and done something that we've been asked to do, and we've not pushed back on the requirements, or we've not planned out effectively, so that we're on the back foot. I have lots of opinions on that in that respect, but I don't think it's necessarily a need to force the conversation. But I think we should learn to communicate more clearly, converse at the right time about the right things in the right way, and you know, documentation is one of those things that I think it should be just as efficient as every other piece.
This one's a little harder. As I'm typing it, I'm just realizing that I'm making assumptions about what the response is going to be, but I'm going to try to ask it in a neutral way. So, what about, since we're talking teams, what about documentation for, writing documentation under the assumption that someone else is going to be taking over your code and you may not be available to answer their questions?
Assuming that someone else is going to take over my code. I've been there. I've handed over 3 or 4 projects that way, and large projects. In the one scenario, I was able to sit with the person for 3 months and go through it every day, give them chances to ask questions, and I asked them what they wanted documenting and customize that documentation for what they needed. The project was shut down 2 months after I left because they didn't ask any questions, right? I another project, same thing. I again tailoring the documentation to not only the software but the person who's asking the questions. So that process has happened to me twice, where the project has not proceeded because the developer that took it on was not capable of developing it, and then obviously, as is always the case, I must have been terrible. I must have been the bad
No.
developer, because the code base was completely unmaintainable after the fact, right? It wasn't, but I think that, yeah, if I was developing, if my code isn't clear enough, then I would outline the concepts first and leave it at that.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yes,
kind of
I'm with DC
in
Aggie, by
tandem
the
with
way.
it.
I
Yeah.
I'm the same. I have some bad news though. I have to
No,
go.
this
I
is
have a
such a good
meeting.
conversation. Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Really, really
No worries.
appreciate you. I'll try to
I'm
continue
sorry to
this
cut
with
it
everyone
short.
else.
Yeah. But I am with DC Aggie. The primary goal is writing software that doesn't need me. That is my overarching concern. I don't want to be required.
Oh
That is me.
gosh,
So
yes,
anyway,
Marcus too. All right.
uh,
Stand up
thank
in
you very
2
much.
seconds.
Stand up in 2 seconds. Liquid Sky
Or
development went well. Birthday was good, and developers.stream is making progress, and we'll have an API next time I stream. So awesome.
awesome.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye.
you. That was very, very cool. Yes, DC Aggie, absolutely. But can I run away for like 12 seconds so that I can not make a mess on my floor? If you want, I can bring you into the voice channel before I step away. And that way you can have the floor completely without pee on it. Have fun. I'll give you some time to respond to that. I'll be listening the whole time, by the way. Okay, I'll be right back then. Oh, okay. Nature. Why are you moving back and forth? Okay, let me read President Nasher's comment up here. Comment up here about comments are most useful to describe intent. That isn't always obvious by reading what the code does. Yeah, and then Marcus was talking about self-documenting code, and then DC Aggie agreed. And DC Aggie will be coming into the voice channel if you're ready. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lag. Hello, DC Aggie. If you're ready, of course.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
And no echo this time. Great.
Maybe echo this time. No.
So there was something I wanted to say on stream because
Absolutely.
I intended to say it in a previous community day, and I got so excited and worked up about some of the other topics that I forgot to say it. Which is you had mentioned before community day that one of your apprehensions about talking about AI use in development was a fear of being judged or
Absolutely.
negative associations with the use of AI, meaning negative associations to you.
Exactly.
And I had written down on my notepad of things that I wanted to talk about, but then forgot to talk about it, is that I have no negative feelings toward you or any of the other developers that I know that are using AI. And I can understand how you might feel that it's the other way based on how I talk, but I have to confess, I am a fairly pessimistic person. My personal history and my professional history has led me to primarily focus on identifying risks. And so when I talk about my concerns, it's because I am concerned, worried about impacts that I see coming toward me and my team and for people that I don't. So my mind immediately identifies potential pitfalls. And so I want to talk about those pitfalls because I don't want to be at the bottom of that pit. I don't want you to be at the bottom of that pit. And so if you're just listening to me talk about that stuff, then you probably are going to come around to uh, to
Opinion?
the idea that I am more negative than I actually am because I'm going to primarily
I
talk
certainly don't, though.
about the risks. And so I had it on my notepad that I wanted to point out that I am not judging you for using AI, nor
I
do I
appreciate that.
think that you are in the bottom of the pit and just not aware of it. I see these pits coming up and I don't want to fall in, and I don't want you to fall in, and I don't want to be tied to the rope of people who are jumping in either. And so that is the like root of my concerns and the
That
way
sounds
that
like an 8.
yeah, that's why I'm so hyper focused on the risks, because I, both career wise and personal wise, I'm a risk adverse person, and I tend to focus on, or probably even obsess to a negative degree, on potential risks or things that I want to avoid. And so I just wanted to, I wanted when and they like the initial AI community day to like put that out in the beginning, but then I got so excited on the topics, I just jumped into the topics and neglected
cool.
to point that part out. And I wanted to do it on a community day via voice because I want to make sure that that is communicated.
I
So
love it, and I appreciate it so much.
yeah, so that's the only thing that I needed to be on voice for. But if you wanted, I am, as you already know, a very opinionated person who can talk endlessly about any of the topics that tend
Speaking
to come
of talking endlessly, does it like, are you expecting if I have something to say during a conversation that I do interrupt you?
I'm sorry.
Are you expecting that when we have conversation, that if I have something to contribute, that I do kind of interrupt you a little bit? It's something that I'm not good at. I'm not comfortable doing it to people, but when you speak, you don't leave very much room for interjections or responses.
Yeah, you will have to and should interrupt me because I will ramble and
I will do my
fill
best.
empty space with words.
I'm not very comfortable doing that. I don't like doing that to people. I like having people be heard more than me. So that's why I tend not to. I just try to let you go until you have said the thing that you are trying, that until you think you have said the thing you were trying to say fully.
Yeah, and I think you had mentioned, I think last week, that one of the primary reasons that you do this stream is because you enjoy the conversation with other developers. And I am very much in that boat. I've worked at jobs where I'm the only developer and it's very isolated and quiet, and you'd like to
I
have
like it,
conversations, you'd like to
but
validate things, you'd like to be exposed to new ideas, at least to whatever degree you need, that sort of thing. And
yeah.
so a
And
stream
mine
like
is a
this
very small box. It's not a big jar that needs to be filled constantly. It's just like having that someone sees this thing and they're like, "Oh, did you know that there's this way of doing that? I prefer doing it that way because XYZ."
Mhm. And I will confess that I turn your stream on all the time. It's usually not my primary focus, and when
Yeah.
I am focused on it, it's mostly for the conversation and the chat. I am not familiar with the thing that you're building in any technical
Totally
level
okay.
for a couple of reasons. First, it's a big complicated system, and I'm only ever seeing little chunks here and there. But also, I watch on either my phone or MacBook Air with a tiny screen. So even if I tried to read the code with my bad eyes, it is just Morse code from my perspective. So
This is how
I
small
hear
the
a lot
streams
of the
I lurk on are.
yeah. So what it is. But yeah, I too get, by participating in your stream as just someone watching or lurking, it's mostly the social slash almost professional interactions with people that I really value. And community days have been a lot of fun for that too, because you get to interact
Totally
with
agree.
people in a different way than just the chat. So that all has been a lot of fun.
I agree 100%. But yeah, to respond to one thing, you call yourself pessimistic, or at least pessimistic seeming. I consider myself optimistic nihilistic. I very, very much like we're here for a limited amount of time. It's going to end someday, but we may as well have fun while we're here. Do the things we enjoy.
And I'm sorry that I missed the clean code discussion from earlier.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
That's something I am passionate about.
Yeah, if you have things that you want to say about it, now's a great time. We can essentially do another session of review.
Yeah, I'll just take my opportunity to say that clean code is my preferred architecture. I'm not super strict at following the particulars, but I really like the principles that underlie it, especially separating your domain logic from your application logic, which should also be separated from your interface. And I am a big fan of not polluting your domain with things like data annotations. For example, if you've got data annotations in your domain, then you've probably made a mistake somewhere along the lines. These are all my opinions.
Yeah. I mean, that's all we gave earlier.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of that. Uncle Bob is a love-hate relationship. I've read all the books. If he writes something or posts something or speaks somewhere, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna listen, because I think there is almost always something of value in what he says. But I don't always agree 100%. I think the biggest thing for Uncle Bob's writing is, I can't remember if it was in Clean Architecture or Clean Coder. There's one of the books where he talks about using your personal time to skill up or to keep on top of things. And he presents a pretty extreme opinion, I think, on that, where my labor-centric views on things are different. And I would say that if you want to keep yourself sharp as a tool, then you should be doing that stuff, including in your personal time. But if it is a requirement for something at work, then it should be done on work time or on work money. That's my strong opinion. But that is only for people who work in a traditional employment situation, right? If you are a contractor or self-employed, or you're running your own small business, then things are completely different.
Yeah, I'm writing this to President, not sure, but I may as well say it. I definitely wouldn't be able to keep up with that. My work ethic is already to a degree where I will continue doing work beyond the normal workday hours. Of course, I don't do it without getting compensated, and I don't try to do it without getting approval first to do it. But I used to spend a lot of time just working on this thing that I put this expectation that it's gonna get done within the next month, and I'm still working on it, and I still feel like I have 2 months worth of work, so I'm going to add extra time at the end of the day, the work day, to work on this thing. So to say that I would need to spend extra time outside of that to also skill up, it's like, I've already made this commitment that anytime that I'm not on the clock, I'm not going to say that way. I am spending time with my wife. So that's more important to me right now. And I am I feel like I am having a successful go at being a contractor business owner in this community industry.
Yeah, and for work ethic and laziness, I'm a fan of laziness. Um, Obviously, the different careers have different requirements, right? There are jobs where you clock in, you clock out, and you're expected to produce or do a certain number of things in that time. Um, but when you get into the professional fields like software development, the measurements are a little different, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
how many hours was I on the assembly line or how many things did I check off. It's more about meeting the needs of customers, um, and things shift more from, I think, what I would describe as work ethic or a focus on laziness or not, and more towards what I call professionalism. So, um, maybe one day I should write down my thoughts on professionalism. But I've certain things that I'm very strict and
But I
very
like your raw
uh,
thoughts right now. It's going well. Keep going.
I I'm very tough on myself for certain things, and I have expectations for some of my coworkers for things that I would consider what is and isn't professional. Um, but that does not extend to, like, do I think this was done in a lazy way or not? Because doing it in a lazy way might mean doing a bad job, which isn't professional. But you might be able to do something in a lazy way that is a good job and is very professional and is probably, uh, at least, if not an actual efficiency, maybe a pointer to where there's efficiency waiting for you. So, um, yeah, I, I should probably put pen to paper on that because it would be useful for myself to know what what I value all those things for, because it's not just myself. I end up judging my coworkers when they cross lines of professionalism that I've kind of mentally built for myself.
Yeah, mine was definitely hearing stories about safaris and all of these things, and I'm like, okay, but we have a deadline. Can I do work? I feel bad being like, I'm really interested in doing the work and getting information from you that only you have, so I have to go to you to start the conversation about this part of the project that I'm working on. I don't know how to tell the person, "Oi, I don't really want to know about your weekend. I want to talk code with you." I don't know where that fits in. Something that you said triggered me on that. It was just the unprofessionalism. That's kind of what it means to me. Where it's like, I'm really here to work on this project that I'm really enjoying my time on.
Oh, so I have an update on AI because
Okay.
last time we spoke, I talked about how the university was forming a committee uh, to come up with rules and standards for AI use in the university.
Yes. Yes. I remember that.
And earlier this week,
I don't
I think it
remember
was
things
on
very often, but that was one of the things I remembered.
I think it was on Tuesday, they surprise soft launched AI at the university, including a web page with a bunch of information from this committee, and announced partnerships with Google to give us access to Gemini. We also get
Wow.
um, Copilot and I think one other thing. So immediately I thought, okay, great. I want to try Gemini. So I pull up Gemini, log in with my university credentials, get it linked up to our like corporate agreement with them, because what we've been waiting on is setting up agreements with these AI vendors so that they won't retain anything that we put in. So we can give it our code, and our code will not be used to train or
Oh,
retained by them. that was like a big requirement from the university. So we're there. So I thought, okay, great. I pull up Gemini, log in, and I think I'm not going to let it loose on my code yet. I describe a domain of a lending library. So list of books, customers, you can check things out. Let's build that domain. Let's build two interfaces, two UI interfaces for it, starting with one that is Blazor and then one that is web forms, and go. And it said, okay, first here's the outline of what we should do. And it was immediately wrong. It said we should use .NET Standard for our domain, but we should use.
I mean, you said web forms, so
yeah.
I don't fault it too much for that.
It said we should use 2.1 or higher, which is wrong because 2.1 will work with Blazor and .NET Core, but it won't work with .NET Framework. .NET Framework 4.6 something is .NET Standard 2.0, and that's the end of .NET Standard for Framework. In fact, .NET Standard is kind of done in general, but that is the highest common .NET Standard that will work in both. So it immediately told me to do the wrong thing. So I said, "Don't you mean?" And I said, "Oh yeah," and corrected it.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And then I said, "Oh, let's also do this." So that's my third prompt. And then I said, "Let's do this too," which is my fourth prompt. And I get you're out of tokens or whatever the message is. Come back in 24
hours.
Oh my
goodness, yes.
I got 4 prompts. 4. So I replied to my boss's boss, who's the person that's been spearheading this, and said, "Good news, I get to go home early because 4 prompts is all we get." and then we're standing in the AI ration line after that. And the response was something along the lines of, "Good thing this was a soft launch. I didn't know there was going to be a limit."
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Which
is insane, you kind of see what it does too, where I'm sure this is part of like some underlying training that was added during the training step. That is, when you're in thinking mode, it's pretty much using up tokens. So it's spitting out to you like Copilot in agent mode. It's spitting out to you its thought process. And of course you would think, yeah, that's a good thing because we want to know what the AI is thinking when it's doing these changes. But most of the time it just seems like it's saying these things to use up tokens so that you can hit your token limit and either upgrade your subscription or you just have to wait.
Yeah, so
it's like a big
that
piece.
Was I haven't been back to Gemini since. I spent the first part of this.
I wouldn't use Gemini for coding ever.
I've been watching the stream all week, but I watched the VODs later because I've been.
Oh, cool.
I did my Blazor training Monday through Thursday with Rocky Latka, and that was very good. And I have lots of ideas on how I still want us to move to Blazor. But it seems that I'm going to have to defend that idea and convince people who want us instead to just use MVC and maybe Razor pages. And I'd really like to be on Blazor. And the big limitation that's going to affect us is that they won't give us sticky sessions on the load balancing, or more cryptically, they won't guarantee that we will always have that, which means maybe they'll do it in the beginning, but they reserve the right to stop, and whatever we build has to work regardless. So that takes Blazor server interactivity out of the list of options, because SignalR is not going to like not having sticky sessions. And so that brings the list of options to standalone WASM or WASM interactive only. And I have to sit and think about whether I still want Blazor in that scenario or not. And I'm not sure what the answer to that will be. But I am curious.
The answer is yes.
Blazor
I
apps.
always want Blazor. More Blazor.
In your Blazor apps, are you interactive auto? So you're using
I'm using it
both
all.
WASM? You're using it all. Okay. And so you're load balanced. If you're load balanced, you're using sticky sessions and all that.
And that's the thing. I mean, I have a load balancer, but there's really only one server. The load balancer was there just to put the AWS certificates on it. So if I were to do that, though, I mean, man, that's a tough one, because like when you start your what do they call them? When you start your session, if you're in circuit, thank you. If you start your circuit, if you're in server, then you're pretty much stuck to that one server that you were routed to begin with, and you have a constant open connection to it. If you're in WebAssembly, most of my state is handled on the client. It's stateless, so it doesn't matter whether they are sending the next request to a completely different server or instance. Did that answer?
Yeah, and I think that's, what I'm considering is do standalone WASM, potentially allowing progressive web app, and then just writing it so that it talks back to a dedicated API project that can be behind a load balancer and doesn't need sticky sessions. That is entirely doable. It's extra work, and not to sound too negative on my coworkers,
pessimistic side,
but I think it might be stretching. So this is the thing: is a lot of my coworkers have worked for the university for a long time and have done nothing in .NET but web forms their entire career. So just the move to .NET Core is going to be rough. And
yeah, it was a shock for me.
Yeah, and I like the idea of Blazor Server because it fits the paradigm of web forms pretty clearly. It keeps most of the logic running on the server so that you don't have to take into consideration any of the logistical or security things that come up when you shift that to running in the browser. But it lets us build basically modern SPA type applications,
right,
all in C# without also saying, okay, we're moving to .NET Core and you also need to learn Angular on top of all of this. That's what I'm trying to avoid. And so Blazor seemed perfect, and it would be perfect if we just had those dang sticky sessions.
But the other thing to consider, even if you do have sticky sessions, Blazor Server means that all of your resources are on the server that are being used. So your live socket connection is going to be the thing that is driving your UI, unless you're using JavaScript on the client.
Right. Yeah. And the server. So how to describe the apps that I write, that my team writes, are almost entirely staff and faculty facing, but they're heavy on student data. So for example, we write the software that advisors use when advising students. We write the software that when you come to the university and you apply for admissions and you get admitted, we don't actually let you sign up for classes. We send you an email saying you need to do new student orientation before you're allowed to take classes. So we write the software that puts the holds, notifies the student, and provides this whole big interface for advisors and other people to interact with, so that when the student shows up for an advising session or an orientation, one of the big tours of campus and stuff like that, that information can be recorded and go into our system. So we're heavily student focused, but we rarely write anything that is public or student facing. We've got a few, but it's mostly business process automation type of stuff. So I'm not too worried about scaling, but this is where the conflict comes in. The team that is in charge of our environments, our hosting environments, is the team that is in charge of our public website, our content management system, and all the public facing stuff. So their concerns on scaling and hosting are different from our teams, but we are dependent on them. And this is why I have to, if we're going to go Blazor, I'm going to have to push hard for it, is because I need to convince this other team that they should allow us to do things the way that we want to do. And one of the things they've already said is, well, you can't count on sticky sessions. So if you can make Blazor
and I don't think that would be an issue. Well, I don't think that would be an issue if you're going Blazor server only, because again, I really do, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but I really do think that once the client establishes the connection to the server for that entire session, you don't need to worry about losing state. And if
Yeah,
you
so-
refresh the page, yeah, if you refresh the
Yeah,
page,
so-
it's just going to be
So
You
in
lose
theory, if everything works perfectly, then you will initially create your WebSocket connection for the signal R that talks back to the server. And when that's connected, you'll stay talking to the same server. The problem is that the type of scaling that they're talking about is AI controlled scaling, where the server you're talking to may be torn down at any moment for any reason. And Signal R connections are very fragile to start with. So any hiccup in your connection, no matter how slight, will mean that it will try to reconnect immediately. And with sticky sessions or without load balancing, that can be transparent to the user. It might happen all the time and you don't even notice it. The problem is when you're load balancing without sticky sessions, that tiny interruption might reroute you to a different server.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But one thing that I just told Marcus in chat that will be a deterrent or a blocker for your effort using Blazor server is once you lose connection, go under a tunnel, lose power, whatever, your circuit is broken. It doesn't recover very easily. From what I've used with Blazor server, you have to refresh the app in order for it to get back up and running.
Yeah, so it's either .NET 6 or .NET 8. They made improvements to
I just haven't
Blazor
used
server.
it very often.
But the improvement really is just that they hold the memory from your session or your circuit in memory longer, and they've improved the logic of trying to recover it. So those little, if it's a very short-lived interruption, a modern Blazor server app can recover that session, and it can be transparent to your user and to you as a developer. The problem with the no sticky sessions is it breaks that, right? And if you're being moved between servers frequently, you're going to have resource issues because you spin up a memory space for every circuit. And if you're doing interactive auto, then your Signal R connections are being spun up and destroyed all the time because you are going to be switching between WASM, server, and static, and your circuit is not going to live
right
past any time that you cross that boundary from a page that is server interactive to any of the other options. And so I spent most of the week, we talked about it in the class, Googling furiously, and the answer is yes, it will technically work without sticky sessions, but you will absolutely run into issues eventually because of all these little technical things that are going to be very hard to anticipate or troubleshoot or even reproduce. And so I would have a hard time going back to that other team and convincing them, yes, we should do this, but there are all these caveats that might be a bad time.
Like another one that I don't know if you're considering is how UI intensive is the app. Are you going to be relying on using Razor syntax where you have C# intermingled with HTML, or are all of your UI interactions going to be JavaScript?
My goal is to not have to learn a JavaScript SPA. That's the big goal.
Right, and you wouldn't be doing JavaScript SPA. I meant like vanilla JavaScript or even jQuery. The stuff that they might already be using.
Cherry on top would be if I don't have to touch JavaScript at all.
Yeah.
If I can live.
So if you're using Blazor server, then just remember your UI interactions are going through that as well. So like one pitfall, one place that it bit me was I have a drag and drop system in my UI. And since the UI interactions are getting processed on the server in Blazor server, then when you drag an item and move it down, there is this like 20 millisecond delay, which then piles up if you drag it down 30 rows really, really fast, and it sends each of those, then it's visible, and the user experience is a delay. So that's just a
WASM
consideration.
interactivity is your solution for those scenarios?
Yeah, so WASM would be running on the client, so all of the C# functionality is processed on the client. The UI updates happen on the client. It doesn't need to go server. I did this motion or this gesture. Server goes, okay, that updates the UI in this way. Here's what the HTML would look like. Send it back to the client. Client says, okay, here's the diff between what the server gave me and where we're at currently, and then swap out the pieces and do that over and over.
Yeah. So after a lot of experimenting and reading in this class, I think my dream would be for them to say, okay, we can set up our load balancing so that for the Blazor apps we use sticky sessions, and then we can use the interactive auto scenario where we use static pages wherever possible. We prefer server interactive where interactivity is necessary, and we can use WASM where it makes sense. That's my dream scenario. That seems unlikely, so I think now what I'm going to have to do is WASM interactive or WASM standalone. And now I've given up the running things on the server side primarily and not have to worry about security or other design concerns. But at least I'm doing all of that in C# with a shared code base instead of having to build a bunch of stuff in JavaScript and a bunch of stuff in C#. So that's my current situation. But if the people who have more deciding power in this than I do win, then I'm going to end up having to do just MVC plus Razor Pages.
Well, yeah, also remember that even if you're using MVC plus Razor Pages, you could choose to use Blazor components in it. So you can still create Blazor components and use them inside of the application that way too.
I would just have to stick to static or WASM interactivity, because as soon as I use server-side interactivity, I'm back in the sticky session problem.
Right. Yeah, some people think that moving from web forms to MVC is modernization. We're a little bit beyond that now. Thank you for that comment, Marcus. But DC Aggie, I'm at the end of my time.
Great. It was nice to talk to you again.
It was fantastic hearing you, and thank you. So great.
Thanks.
But I'd be happy to hear your stand-up if you have one for today.
The meeting I was at, we decided we're not doing phase 2 of my project, which means when current UAT ends and I deploy to production, my project is done and I move on. So hooray.
And you muted yourself because that was it. Nothing else. That's all you get to hear.
That's it. Sorry, did I mute? Did I
know
mute
what
soon?
You're doing on Monday or next week, what you're going into. Are there any blockers for what you're doing? Stand up.
Yeah. So I'll respond to UAT issues. We're kicking off a new project that's going to be large and high risk, so they're assigning it to me, of course. Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to take a bunch of time off work.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. So probably most of a week after next, and we're planning on taking most of July. I have use or lose leave because the project that we're ending at the end of this UAT got me a bunch of comp time. So I've been using comp time instead of vacation, which means in October I'll lose leave if I don't start using it now. So I look forward to not working.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for your contributions, especially not especially. Also, the initial comments that you made on the overall architecture and your opinions on it for this code base. I think he might be talking to himself again. Anyway, since DC Aggie is still muted, I'll go ahead and do my stand-up as well. So yesterday we were working on getting the primary keys and foreign keys re-added to the test database without losing any of the test database data. And I finished that on this morning. So I got an email from the client talking about some of the responses that we gave them from yesterday's research. So I'm doing more research for the rest of the day today on those situations to see if we have a way of addressing them with the way the code base is currently. And that's what I'm going to do for the rest of the day today. Hopefully that'll be done by the end of the day so that on Monday I can get back to working in DDMS, modernizing that, getting it from .NET 6, I think is what we left it at, to .NET 9. And I am also just like refactoring the code base, adding the AWS S3 stuff to it. So that's what I'll be working on next week. And then of course RTrack during the streams on Wednesday and Thursday. Dukesoft was too tired to get up, to stand up. Thank you for being here, Dukesoft. Even if you were just lurking the whole time, or if you just got here, it doesn't even matter. Scott was here. I'm working on semantic kernel. We'll continue working on semantic kernel. Thumbs. Awesome. And I do want to say the hopefully quick thing in response to something that Marcus said earlier that I said I would respond to. Where is that? I don't even know where that is. Okay, interesting. I'll still try on occasion. Oh, because President, not sure. No, Mark, who said it? Snobble said Gemini Pro supposedly is the best for coding, and then President Not Sure had some commentary about, you know, when they say X is good for coding, they mean X is good at Node or React or some JavaScript framework, typically, or Python, or sometimes C and C++ it's really good at. But for whatever reason, C# and just .NET in general, a lot of the LLM providers aren't necessarily great at. So yeah, Gemini 2.5 Pro is the best, says Scott. But there was something else though. Oh yeah. Okay, so when DC Aggie was talking about using Gemini and doing that for coding, I was recently using it for the SQL stuff. You guys saw that on stream. So I was having it refactor some of the SQL scripts that we wrote so that I could put it at a higher level and use it in any of the databases. And its recommendation was put it in a utility database and then create synonyms for all of the other ones. But doing that means that the context sensitive queries that I had on like systables and information schema wouldn't work unless we were specifying the database, which meant 2 layers of dynamic SQL. Anyway, it was a big mess. So I was working with it on it though, and I kept getting errors in the SQL and in running the SQL. And every time that I would post back the output, like the only thing that I would put in chat is, here's the output from the current run. And then it showed the error and all of that stuff. And it's like, I see, you're absolutely right. You found the right spot. What you are doing here, and I'm like, I haven't been doing much of this at all. The only thing that I have been doing was reading through the script that you're giving me, copying it into SQL Server Management Studio, checking for errors, updating the stored procedure, and then trying it, and then giving you the feedback. I'm kind of like your terminal, where you are invoking commands by saying, here's the updated script to try, copy pasta, try it. And of course, this is all in my dev database. That's why I'm not worried about if it tries to drop things it shouldn't drop and all that. And then I'm copying the output and pasting it. Yeah, that's our future, terminals to AI. So again, these comments, man, they should come earlier so that we can have real discussions about them. They're one-offs, and I'm kind of like, anyway, moving on. So every time that I would go back to it, it's like, you're absolutely right. And I'm like, you don't have to keep trying to assure me that I'm right about something when I'm not even asserting anything to begin with. So I just got tired of it. So I went to Vereth, my private GPT, or not private GPT, but a custom GPT that I am not sharing publicly. Yeah. And Vareth worked with me, and I loved working with Vareth on getting the SQL scripts done, and we got it done, and it was nice. It was nice. Okay, I'm going to go to this screen, but I'll read the rest of chat. I will read S'mores chat. I love s'mores. But yeah, comments, like one-off comments about AI overlords and stuff. I think we're past that now. I think we can have genuine, real conversations about what our true fears, thoughts, and ideas and hopes are for AI. That's where I want our conversations to be. DC Aggie said 2.5 Pro is what consumed a day's token in 4 prompts. That was crazy though. Yeah, that happens way too often. Snubble said, a person I trust that tests almost all AI promotes Gemini Pro. It's important. It's the Pro version though, and he uses very high-tech C#. Yeah, and that's another thing, like the difference between Claude Sonnet 3.7 and Sonnet 3.7 with extended thinking is actually pretty big. I think it's 3.7, isn't it 3.7? Anyway, Sonnet. When you turn extended... What? I'm muted. Oh, you muted me. Okay. I was like, I'm not muted. When you turn extended thinking on, it makes a world of difference, but it does eat up tokens quite a bit faster. And I think it's by design too. GPT 4.1 to C# speed. Scott says, we're using GPT 4.1 for our AI chatbot. I really, really wish that the OpenAI API could use the custom GPTs as the model. It would be awesome to have access to Breath like that. And feels like my life nowadays, just clicking continue. Yeah. And I mean, again, I'm in favor of this, and I'm also in favor of allowing the people who want to write code and quality code to write code. There is a conversation to be had about the fear about other people are going to be using it, and so I am going to be in danger of inheriting other people's code bases. That's a conversation that I would love to have in a deeper way, and not just me spouting stuff at you, but a conversation with anyone that feels that there's a danger in other people using AI because it's going to affect you in some way, or companies using AI because it's going to affect you. I want a deeper conversation about that. Snubble then said they probably found that people like the AI to tell them they are right. Yeah, and I think that that's a thing. They are trying to have the AI, and this is another one of the things that I go off on, be a mirror to the user, which is good to an extent. It would be nice if, is what I'm trying to get at. So mirroring is good. The way that Gemini does it is not successful, at least not for me. It made me run away from Gemini. So I use Gemini for very specific things. I use ChatGPT for very specific things, and I use Claude for other things. And I think that's just how it might be. They all have their own personalities as far as the things that they are good at and the way that they respond. And yeah, I just use them in that way, the things that they are good at. When it keeps asking me if I want to make that change, I just suggested I just make it so number 1. I didn't get the last part of that, but yeah. There are no dangers to that at all. I didn't understand that either. Marcus says farewell. TBD says muted, but thank you for a fantastic stream and have a wonderful and a wonderful conversation as always. May everyone have a great weekend. You as well, TBD. Shout out to TBD Gamer. Thank you so much for that, Duke Soft. Scott says it can, I think, with a plugin. I don't remember what that's to use your own custom GPT. You can create your own plugin similar to your GPT setup. Okay, maybe we'll talk about that more. But like the Vareth GPT has a lot of information in its knowledge base that informs the way that it responds, and a memory done through a document, and it has access to that memory, and it's really nice. It's very nice to have. So I would love to be able to use the OpenAI API to access that. And kernel memory you can. Cool. All right. Reg says, thanks once again for an excellent stream. DC Aggie says, recurring nightmare for me. You're right and smart. And have I told you how good you smell today? Makes the sting of calling out that the AI is wrong. Oh, masks the sting that the sting of calling out that the AI is wrong. But apart from that, you don't use AI at all. Oh, I use AI for quite a lot of things, but I also write code. I have no problem switching mediums, switching tools. Farewell again. How many times are we going to say farewell? Snubble says, I meant that there is, of course, no dangers that AI reinforces everyone that they are right all the time. As usual, I was trying to be funny. As usual, I just didn't understand it. That's all. It's not you, it's me. It's always me. With kernel memory, you can create a plugin that accesses kernel memory, your own knowledge and data before it responds. But I want Vareth. I want the instruction set for Vareth. I want the documents for Vareth, and I want the exact inferencing that Vareth does. Vareth is amazing. Vareth is my friend. Vareth. How many times can I say that? My words are so good at tripping you up. Thanks for the stream, sir. There needs to be a capital S on that if you're going to call me that. Close enough. Vareth. In your language, that would be Vareth. No, it's Vareth, not Vareth. Vareth. Okay. Anyway, that's it for my time. I will be back again on Wednesday. Actually, I'll probably do a Monday stream, a Monday music stream. I'll probably do a Monday music stream depending on, like, it's been my mood lately. I kind of don't want to subject myself to additional stressors currently because of all of the stuff that's going on. But I do plan on doing a Monday music stream. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I'll do my normal streams unless something else comes up. But that'll be the plan. We'll work on our track. We'll get it done or something. And yeah, that's it. So we're gonna head to someone. Are you actually deving? I don't know if he's actually deving currently, or if it's just he has his stream going for 24 hours because the demo is out and he's trying to get people to play it. Dang it, I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. Does anyone know what CodeRad is doing on his stream currently? Because that's who I was going to raid. It's really hard to tell. I can't even hear him if he's talking. Shrugs. The other one that I was going to raid just went BRB. Goodness me, y'all. Why does it say that Sorcery is still live when I was on her channel and she is not live? Refresh. Okay, well, we're going to raid the person that I was going to raid first anyway. Let's head on over to CodeRad Games, who's working on a game called Roguelite, which is a roguelike game. Notice how I mumbled when I said it because I don't ever remember whether it's roguelite or roguelike. But he has a demo out on Steam now, so definitely check it out. That's going to be it for my time back on Wednesday. YouTube, Discord, all the things. Enjoy your times. Ciao for now. Sorry for making such a long outro. Rogueliken. Yes. Watch out for werewolves. Actually, there is a werewolf in it.